guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, happy to have you, hope you are doing well. Today I thought that we could chit chat about the books that I read in January, go over a little bit of stats, and just generally talk about the things I read. I did not vlog at all in January. There was one point when I thought I was going to do a TBR-a-thon vlog, but unfortunately simply didn't have the time. January is always dedicated to posting like end of year content. Gotta make sure I update the series and talk about my favorites and all that fun stuff. So I did not vlog anything, which means we have quite a few books to talk about. I managed to read 20 books in the month of January. This is the best January reading month I have ever had since I started tracking my reads, since I started really like getting back into reading. I normally would average between 2 to 6 in January, just because, like, again, end of year content, reading slumps in the winter suck. But for whatever reason, this year, I did okay. I participated in a TBR-a-thon, I participated in Winter Ween, I finished some things, I had some buddy reads. Like, it was overall a pretty solid month. So I'm excited to chat about some of the books that I read. I'm not gonna go into super depth with all of them, just because I don't have a lot to say on some. But I only have one book that I will not be discussing because it's secret. It's gonna come out at some point. We'll talk about it eventually, but I will be reading a few secret books for some secret TBRs and secret video projects behind the scenes, so we'll have to just wait for those. But let's just jump right in and start talking about the first book that I read in the month of January. Technically, I finished this in January, so that's why it counts, but I read majority of it in December. Austin, my partner, and I went on a road trip to Boise, Idaho, and we thought that it would be fun to start an audiobook, as you do when you're road tripping, and we started listening to Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. It is as good as everybody says. I strongly recommend you listen to the audiobook. It is unfortunately an Audible exclusive. It was so impeccable. It was one of the best audiobook experiences I've had all year, and I strongly, highly recommend it. It was very good. I think with the type of story this is, it's very space heavy. We are following one character. We've got a dual timeline situation. We're seeing what led up to the events of where we are at. It's got the amnesia trope, which I know a lot of people don't like. I think in this story it was handled well. I normally don't like it either, but I think this one, like, it makes sense because we are following this guy who just goes to space, gets shot up into space, and has no memory of, like, how he ended up getting here, and is trying to puzzle things together and is slowly getting it all back. But basically he is on survival mission for saving planet Earth, and so he is alone in space and doing his best, trying to, one, piece together his memory of how he got here, and to figure out how to save Earth to begin with. And I completely know that as I'm explaining this to you, it doesn't sound like a book that I would like. It doesn't sound like that exciting of a book for most people. Andy Weir writes in a very approachable way for science fiction because he is constantly telling us scientific things, which I believe him full-heartedly. I'm not going to do my own research, but we're learning a lot about the science, and he explains it in a scientific way with the proper terms, but then also explains it in a way that makes sense for the general reader. Like, Austin is more advanced in science than I am, so he was picking up on things and guessing what was going to come next, and then the character would say it in more simple terms for myself, and they would line up. And so it was a very interesting and fun way of listening to the audiobook. I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed that I understood the science and it wasn't like so over my head, so unapproachable. I enjoyed the humor in this. It was very delightful. I laughed a lot. I think that the character is solid and incredibly well done. I really enjoyed this. It had twists and turns that I wasn't expecting. Every time we had to stop listening to the audiobook was at like the worst moment for the book, because something would happen and we're like, no, we can't stop. What do you mean? What do you mean we're home? What do you mean we have to stop listening to this? There was a lot of those moments, so I think that this was very well done. I understand why so many people love it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think Austin probably landed around 5. I rounded up. No, I think I rounded down. I don't remember. There was definitely moments in this that were a little long, a little drawn out, that I think we could have shortened the book a little bit, kept the pace a little bit more upbeat and a little bit quicker, but overall I think that this is a very great experience. Will I go back and read The Martian? Probably not, realistically, but I'm happy that I finally read Project Hail Mary and got to experience it. It's some of my best friends' like favorite books, so I'm glad that I'm finally in the know. The next two books that I will chat about just very quickly were mangas. The concluding finally I finished a series. I've checked off a couple series this month. Go me. But I finished the Fruits Basket manga. I am so happy. They're right there behind me. Doesn't matter. I finally finished them. Over Christmas break, I read volumes 8 through 12, I believe. And I finally finished the last two of this year, 11 and 12. I love the Fruits Basket franchise. I love the anime. I love the graphic novels. I have the collector's edition, so they're bound together, so it's 2 volumes in one technically. But I truly love Fruits Basket. It's one of my favorite animes. It's so cute. It's so slice of life and sweet. You're following a teen girl, Toru, and she's recently orphaned and finds her way with the Soma family and lives with them. And it's just pretty slice of life, but there is the fun, fantastical twist that the Soma family has been cursed. Some of the members are possessed by the Zodiac, and if they're hugged by the opposite gender, then they transform, which is a weird curse thing, and I'm not gonna go into it. I will say that as much as I love Fruits Basket, it's one of my favorite series, especially one of my favorite watches. I have never sobbed so hard at a show in years. It really punched me in the gut. I loved it so much. With that said, I will say that there are some problematic things. This is a Japanese author. This was translated from Japanese. It was written in the early 2000s, maybe in the 90s. So there's definitely cultural differences and some things that I deem inappropriate with some age gap situations going on. One of those things that we all recognize is questionable and we don't love it, but we love the series and just kind of pretend that's not happening. Okay, the next book I read was another banger. I finished the Shepherd King duology. I ended up reading Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig not long after I finished One Dark Window, which happened to be one of my favorite books of 2024. Can we just take a second to say, like, I was in Katie Coulson's video because I talked about One Dark Window? I haven't processed that. I haven't talked to any of my friends about it. I haven't chatted with anybody about it. No one said anything to me. I'm kind of just like in denial and pretending like it didn't happen so that I can stay cool on the internet. But I'm kind of freaking out about it. Okay, anyway. One Dark Window was really good. It is a very unique magic system story. It's kind of like a grim, dark fairy tale-esque story where we're following a young girl, Elspeth. She's sick, and when kids are sick with the illness, it gives them abilities and powers, but the king is like, nay, that's no good, so they end up often dying at a very young age. Elspeth is one that kind of slipped under the crack and got away with having powers and staying alive, and she eventually teams up with Prince Raven Yu, and they're on the hunt to find cards. The card system is really cool. I love the magic system. I was really worried with Two Twisted Crowns that I wasn't going to like it based off information people told me. They said, oh, well, it's following a new couple. You rarely see the original couple, and although their storyline, like, gets wrapped up, you don't see them that often, and that's just not quite true. Like, you still see the characters. They get maybe 40% of the book. I don't love the new romance quite as much, but I understand, like, why she did it that way. My expectations were just, like, low, and so I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought, and I gave it a 4.5. Not quite 5 stars, just because, again, I didn't love the new couple quite as much, and some of their chapters felt long, and I was like, we can go back to Raven. Yeah, I love Raven. I love Raven and Elspeth. The next book that I read, I don't really have much to say, but I listened to the audiobook for Ace, which is What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. I thought this was fine. I have not read a lot of nonfiction surrounding asexuality. And was it good? Sure. I don't know what, like, I'm not great at rating nonfiction. One of the things that I didn't super love was just, it was pretty short, and I didn't feel like all of it mattered. It's basically Angela telling us a little bit about her life and her experience with asexuality, and as well as interviews with other types of asexuality, seeing as it's a spectrum and different for person to person. I did learn some stuff, but I didn't learn as much as I would hope to have. Maybe I'm just a little bit educated on the topic, seeing as it is how I also identify, but I was hoping to, like, learn a little bit more, and it was a very good introduction to asexuality if that's something that somebody is interested in, but I was looking for a little bit more. So it didn't quite check all of the boxes for me, but I didn't dislike it. The next thing that I read, which I can talk about kind of in tandem out of order, is I reread Fourth Wing so that I could read Iron Flame because Onyx Storm is out and I wanted to buddy read with my friends. Daphne's reading for the first time. Eliza's rereading with us and then reading Onyx Storm. I have not yet read Onyx Storm, so no spoilers, but I will be reading it this month in February. Thank goodness. Because I'm surprised I haven't been spoiled by anything. I've just seen people crying and I'm like, I need to read this as soon as possible because I want to know what's up. I want to know why people are crying. I'm very excited though. I know that there's a lot of mixed reviews out there about Fourth Wing. Is it well written? Not particularly the best, but I also think that it clearly has hit the spot for a lot of people, and even if it is military propaganda, like, I'm kicking my feet over Xaden and Violet, and I love the dragons. So it's shaped me as a human, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's just who I am now. 5-star read for Fourth Wing, 4.5 for Iron Flame, just because I liked Iron Flame, but I put it down for like a good chunk of time while my friends finished it and they started like moving on. Like, I just didn't pick it up. I think I was scared. I don't know. I was procrastinating for a while because I thought the ending would hurt. The ending didn't hurt. The next thing that I read was a series check off for me. I binged the 3 books for Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesar. I read Clown in a Cornfield a couple years back, so this was a reread, and then I continued on with the series, and I was really excited for book 3 because I knew it was going to follow the cult, the people following Friendo the Clown, and I was really excited about that. And it was kind of a letdown, the 3rd book especially, because we didn't have the same core characters, and I was missing them. I felt it deeply, and I was like, I just don't care about this vengeance story. It didn't hit for me, but I think that the first one is fun. I heard that this might be getting a movie this year, so that's exciting. I will definitely watch it if it comes out, but I think for like a fun YA slasher, it does the job, but I don't think it needed to be $3. So yeah, they've gone down in enjoyment for me, but the first one I think was good. And the second one was alright. The next thing I read was a quick little graphic novel by E.M. Carroll, which was When I Arrived at the Castle, and this was fine. I think that it needed to be longer. I think that we needed more of a storyline rather than whatever we got, but I think the art was stunning. Okay, one battery change later. I was saying about When I Arrived at the Castle. It was fine. There was no real story, though. We've got a young girl going to a castle, a manor, with a vampire, and it's kind of trying to be sapphic, but really it was kind of just confusing. I wish that we had more between the characters and like why they were where they were, and if they were sapphic, what was their relationship. There just wasn't simply enough. I think that realistically, I think the story would be like a 2, but I think the artwork is like a 5. And so I think for that, I will bump it to 3 and give it a better rating, but I was kind of disappointed by the lack of storytelling. But again, it's so pretty, and I like the fairy tale twist to it. The next thing I read, I don't know how to talk about. I read The Bell Chime. I listened to The Bell Chime, and I really liked parts of it, but it was forgettable and I was confused and nobody really explained it to me. Like, I read reviews afterwards being like, all right, smart people, tell me, what did I miss? Like, what's going on? And I didn't really get answers. This kind of reminds me of a less scary, less animal cruelty version of The Night Guest. It's following a girl and it's all about insomnia and like what's happening in your sleep that you don't know about. I think this would have been a book I would have enjoyed better and understood better if I had physically read along or physically read in period. I think it's on Kindle Unlimited if you're interested in it, but I'm going to give it a really bad pitch, so I'm not going to help if you're interested in it, unfortunately, because I don't understand it well enough to talk about it. But what I recall was there was like interludes and parts where I wasn't sure if it was the author interjecting or if it was like breaking a fourth wall situation or if it was like an interlude. I don't know, but the interludes were really cool and I really liked those parts. But when we were like meeting new characters and jumping to different timelines and how it was all supposed to like relate to each other, like I think a lot of it just kind of went over my head and I was like, girl, what? So I gave it a low rating because I didn't enjoy my time. I do recognize that it's probably my fault because I wasn't understanding. If I was ever drawn to this again to the future for whatever reason, which isn't likely, but if it was to happen, I think I would have to read the ebook because what? What did I read? The next thing I read was also kind of a disappointment, but not like the worst thing ever. I listened to 12 Nights at Rotterhouse, and this was fine. I spoiled myself because I was like, oh, am I picking up like what the author is putting down? Like, am I understanding what's going on right now? So I Googled a simple little question. and a Reddit forum was the first thing that came up that spoiled the whole ending, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I don't think that necessarily helped my enjoyment, but I've seen this be called pretentious, and I don't completely disagree. I didn't mind the male voice. I didn't mind the characters. It's all about this guy who's like, I'm gonna go observe a haunted house and I'm gonna record about it, and I'm gonna take my friend who fully believes in ghosts because I'm a skeptic, and we're gonna have like a two sides of the coin situation, blah 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 blah. Yeah, it was a little pretentious. Yeah, these men do kind of suck, and the twist was, how you say, unsatisfying and boring. I think my Goodreads review is just men are gross, and I think that sums it up pretty well. Like, I think that this isn't that great. I don't think it was that well written in compared to other horror books that I've read. I thought the audiobook was fine. I think that the twist, again, was just whatever. I didn't feel, and I know I spoiled myself for the twist, so, but like, still, like, the meaning behind the twist, like, I wish this was far more supernatural and really like went haunted house, and it just didn't quite do that for me. But I didn't mind the friendship. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say, so we're gonna just move on. The next book that I read was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, and this was a fun audiobook to listen to. Is it going to be forgettable? You betcha. I think that it reminds me a lot of What Lies in the Wood by Kate Alice Marshall. What's nice about Listen for the Lie is I didn't know anything about it going in, so I didn't know if it was based on anything. I didn't know if there was like a twist that I was gonna understand, so I was pleased about that. I like the podcast element. I think having a podcast in your thriller book is fun, even if it's kind of been beaten to death and not always as enjoyable. I think that this one was well plotted. I think that the points in which you get the podcast narrative is good and well paced and timed. I think that it's fun getting a lot of different perspectives in the podcast rather than just be like one or two people. I like the interview style of it, but I do wish that there was just more to the story. It kind of has that like domestic thriller, but it leans more YA, and there's obviously going to have to be a romance, just like What Lies in the Wood. There has to be a romance to keep audience hooked, which I do think in the overall grand scheme of things, books with romance in them sell better. This is obviously a very well loved thriller, similar to First Light Wins. A lot of people, like, outside of the thriller genre readers, really enjoyed What Light Wins. I was one of them. I enjoyed it too, but there's a romance in that that's pretty decently featured. What Lies in the Wood also has romance. I think that romance in thrillers is just going to be a little bit more normal than we were used to, but it's always been a thing, and especially if it's like more of a domestic small town, I think that it makes sense that there's romance in it, but it's not always my favorite. I didn't like the romance in this. I didn't like the characters together. I honestly didn't like the main character. She was incredibly unlikable, but I do think that was kind of the point. I think the whole town was meant to be unlikable. They all sucked. This town sucks. But I just wanted, like, a better twist, like a better reasoning behind why the events took place. I wanted more from it, and I just didn't quite get that. It was kind of boring, kind of not quite predictable, but expected. It wasn't anything crazy. It was, yeah, that tracks, and then, like, you move on, and it kind of gives you the same, like, of course, because it couldn't be anything else. It has to be this. This is basically following a young girl who was assumed to have murdered her best friend, and her best friend's been missing forever. She's returning to her hometown because a podcast is happening, and she's, you know, a little bit down on her luck with her relationship and just kind of stuck in life. So she's going home to the small town, first time since the murder or disappearance, murder. And she's basically gonna uncover the truth. It's got the amnesia trope. It definitely feels a little bit convenient at times, but overall it didn't completely bother me as much. So maybe I don't hate that trope as much as I used to think I did. But basically, yeah, she goes to the small town. She's going to find out what happened to her friend. And it didn't do enough for me. So it was fine. I think that I could widely recommend it to people, especially people who aren't used to reading thrillers. But overall, it was kind of just like a middle of the road thriller for me. Still gave it like 4 stars. So like it wasn't bad. It was just like not as good. The next thing that I read was The Lost Story by Meg Schaffer. This is the author of The Wishing Game, I think, which people loved. And I think it made into the 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards. So it was like, cool. Well-loved author. I got this from Book of the Month. I was really excited. I picked up the audiobook, and I knew pretty quickly that this story wasn't going to be for me. It's a lot darker than you would expect, but it also felt like it really piggybacked off the fact that it was compared to C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. And so I didn't understand a lot of the world building, and it just felt lacking for me. Everybody kept talking about how, oh, this is such an ode to reading and writing and stories and fairy tales, and I was like, cool, I love that. I didn't get that from this at all. It didn't give me those vibes at all. I'm not going to say it wasn't well written. I think that the writing was fine, but the characters sucked. I was confused more often than not. The world building lacked. The romance was a little weird and uncomfortable. Again, this also had the amnesia trope, and I didn't like a lot of the things. I had a lot of issues with this one, and I couldn't even really tell you too much what this is about. This is basically following a girl who goes to this guy who, when he was younger, him and his best friend went into the forest and they got lost. And like many months to a year later, they came back out and didn't remember what happened to them, and now he's got this gift for finding missing people. And this girl's like, hey, my sister is missing and she disappeared the same place you did, so I need your help to go get her. And he's like, absolutely not. And then randomly he's like, actually, we'll do this, but I have to go get my guy friend who doesn't remember anything from the forest, and I'm gonna bring him as well, and we're gonna have a cool little trauma bond time. And then they go, and it's like a Narnia situation, and I just didn't connect to these characters. I didn't like anything from them. The beginning half was so slow and drawn out that it took forever to get to anything interesting, and once we get into the forest, I just had no interest for what happened to these characters. They're dealing with some really harsh realities that are difficult to stomach, so definitely look into trigger warnings, because it's not something you would expect from this story. But my overall, absolute biggest complaint for this entire book was that it is centering two sisters who are looking for each other and two best friends who are also gay together. And I like a queer story as much as the next person, but tell me why the author thought that it was appropriate to call them lovers and brothers in the same sentence over and over and over and over again. Like, I get it, they're best friends. Being best friends with your lover makes sense to me. I'm best friends with my lover. Like, that makes sense to me. I don't call him my brother. That's fucking weird. So, literally, all the time, they were referring to each other as brothers, and I can see, I get, like, oh, it's Narnia, those were actual siblings, but when they're in this Narnia world, they're, like, siblings, and simply, no, that doesn't work for me. I simply do not want my romantic leads to ever even refer to each other as brother. Like, I get it if you're like, haha, no homo, bro, because you're not out to each other yet and you're not confessing your feelings. That I can understand. But like, no, I can't do that. You can't kiss and then be like, haha, brothers. So 2 stars. Really didn't like this one. Moving on from that book. Oi. I finally finished Things We Say in the Dark. This is by Christy Logan, and this is a short story collection, all written by the same author. It's horror and it's queer and it's a lot of different things, and there were some portions that I was like super not into, mostly the motherhood and pregnancy stuff, because can't relate, don't want to read about it, but they were still effective horror stories, even if it's not a topic I'm interested in reading about. They did effectively scare me, so I mean, good job. But I think a lot of these stories went a little bit over my head. I don't know if I was quite smart enough for them. There was also, like, I guess I'll call them interludes. It seemed like the author was inserting themselves into this in between stories, but those also didn't really, like, make sense to me or mean anything. Like, they could have been taken out and nothing would have changed, so I don't know what the point of them was. And some of the stories were really good. I enjoyed a lot of them. I didn't track like ratings for each story, unfortunately, but there were definitely some standout ones that I did really like, and they properly unsettled me. I had a really good time picking this up here and there. It wasn't like a super big priority to me to get through fast, but whenever I would like lay in bed, read like 20 pages, read a story, and go to sleep, it was a nice easy reading for a little while. So I did enjoy it. I do recommend it. It was pretty good. The next thing I listened to was The City in Glass by Nevo. And this is like angels and demons, and they're in love, and they're star-crossed lovers, and they're gonna find each other in destiny, but also like war and opposites attract. And I didn't feel any type of way to this story. I didn't connect to these characters. I didn't care about these characters. I was really unbothered about what was going on. I am glad that this was only a novella. I think if it was any longer, I probably would have DNF'd. I had a really not super fun time. I think that Nevo is an incredible writer. I think that their writing style is beautiful and well written every single time. But I also think that Nevo is much smarter than I am, and a lot of things go over my head. I am in a period of no thoughts, brain empty, real dumb girl energy. So that's the vibes that I'm bringing to this first quarter of the year while I am in tax hell at my job. So I can't be listening to an audiobook that expects me to understand a deeper message right now. I don't have the thought process to do that. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad book, but it did not work for me. But it did loosely remind me of The Sixth Death of the Saint by Alex E. Harrow. But like, that's so much better, and I would just recommend that. And also recommending things that are better. The Lost Story, if you're interested in that, I think that you should actually just read The Wicker King, because it's way better, and I think it does a phenomenal job. I think The Wicker King and even maybe Don't Let the Forest In, I think that those two books are a beautiful match, and I think that The Lost Story can just, you know, go in the corner. The last thing that we have to talk about is Lavender Clouds by Bex Allerton. This was a nonfiction graphic novel. I think it's fine. I think that the art style is really cute. This is definitely more of I post comics to my Instagram and I'm going to put them all together and make a book, because they were very repetitive. It was saying the same 5 things over and over again. This is all about autism and ADHD and neurodivergence, but it was so repetitive and telling me the same 3 things so frequently that I was like, I get it, babes. Like, I can really relate to a lot of these things that you're saying, so I get it, but like, I don't need it this many times. Like, I got it the first 5. And so I think that part was kind of annoying, but I think that, again, the style was really pretty. I love the colors. I thought that it was funny. There was a couple that I screenshotted so that I could have memories and relatability to send to my friends and be like, haha, that me. So I did enjoy it overall, but I would hope for something like this to have a little bit more depth and say a little bit more, maybe throw in a couple positive things about being neurodivergent and not just the negative things, and talk a little bit more about what it's like. I don't know, I just wanted more from it. I think a lot of the graphic novels that I read this month, you could say I just wanted more from them, like they under-delivered. But again, everybody's talented, so I can't do it. So who am I to judge? So anyways, those are all of the 20 books that I read. Technically 19, because we're not talking about the secret one. So the 19 books out of the 20 books that I read. Just a quick little rundown. Honestly, like, I'm happy that I got a couple 4.5 stars, but I'm ready for a true solid 5-star read. I'm ready for my first 5-star of the year. I think I might be the problem. I think it might be me being too stingy about it. Like, girl, what do you mean you haven't given a 5-star out? What's wrong with me? I also have been picking up things that I wouldn't normally pick up. I wouldn't say that a lot of these January picks were like, oh, I really want to read them. It was a lot of, oh, well, this fits for a readathon prompter. Oh, I need to pick it up because my hold is due or whatever. So it wasn't like me reading for fun. February is the month of me reading for fun. I'm having only a good month in February, okay? Oh my god, before we go, we have to talk about DNFs. Guys, I DNF'd my first book. Oh no. So, hi, if you're new to my channel. I don't like to DNF books. I feel bad about it. I get a weird guilt thing because somebody obviously poured so much time and energy into writing a book, and I'm saying it's not good enough for me. And who am I to say such a thing to a book? I did it. I had to DNF Heavenly Tyrant. I know. It feels like a crime. I read a lot of low-star rating reviews on Goodreads, so I do know what happens. I got a good picture of it. I'm glad that I tapped out when I did, because there's some issues people were having with the one and only sexual scene in the book that I honestly don't think I would have been mentally equipped to listen to anyway at that moment in time. But this is a sequel to Iron Widow, and I was so excited. I've been anticipating this release for literal years, and we finally get it. And my romance is non-existent. A new romantic lead is introduced, and I am just confused about the politics, and we've basically forgotten any, like, decency to the characters. Like, it kind of just felt like we got new characters, and they're bad. And I can see a lot of the like nuance to it. Like I get it. I understand what the author I think was going for when trying to talk about like, oh god, how do I explain it? I am simpleton. Basically trying to construct a new society from going from one system and trying to create another, but how they are becoming the heavenly tyrants. They're becoming the thing that they don't want to be whilst trying to be socialist. And so I just felt a little murky at times with the politics. I wasn't interested in a politic heavy story at this current moment, so I put it down. Will I pick it up in the future? I don't know, because apparently there's going to be a third book, and I don't know how I feel about that. And I'm not interested in the direction that it's gone in, and it was kind of disappointing and a little concerning based off the reviews that I was reading, and I was just kind of a letdown. So yeah, I DNF'd it. Let me know if that was a mistake, if I should carry on. I know that God knows when we would ever get a third book, so I don't know if it's really worth it. But it was disappointing for me, and so I stopped like 42% in. I'm sorry. I know. That one feels like a crime, but I feel like I also had to admit it to the internet because that's honesty. And I don't normally talk about DNFs just because like I didn't read it, but like I did really attempt. So let me know if I made a mistake, and please don't hate me. I am off. I'm gonna go skedaddle, and I will see you guys on my next video at a later date. My birthday will be the next video, so please be nice to me. I'm gonna be turning a year older, and my birthday is on Sunday, so I will see you guys then for whatever video I end up posting. I need to plan that out, and I'll see you there. Bye!